name is Teresita Blanco, the Artsy sister, and we're continuing with Saturnastra. This is chapter 23. Much room for thought. Iago realized that he might have been right, thinking never did the lad any good. He resolved to distract Ahi by any means necessary. The last thing Praga needed was another Ahi-related calamity. For Iago, Ahi was like bad weather. He came without warning and messed up your crops and good. And even if you could see the storm coming from a mile away, the only thing one could do was board up and pray that the roof didn't fly away. The thought which ate away at Ahi was slowly becoming an obsession, and his friend of thought was interrupted by a tapping by the window. His eyes stopped being glassy, and he noticed the baby pharaoh dragon in his mouth. When the dragon caught his attention, she sighed with relief, and this sign came with a few puffs of smoke. She ran around in circles close to Ahi's line of sight, and Ahi opened the window to let her come within. The dragon clawed her way up the window nimbly, and Ahi picked her up by the armpits, and he stroked her in the mane as if she were a household cat. While carrying her, he went towards the door, and he said to Iago, "I'm going to go see Eleanor." When Ahi left the room, Iago began to ponder on his situation, and for a second his mask completely fell when he stared at one of the observers. It was only for an instant which his eyes followed one of our movements, and this instant was enough to make us realize what Iago really was. We departed the room in search of Ahi, and the child was already halfway up the stairs, and trailing behind him was a lurker from the library. Lurkers were peculiar things, and they were usually the main reason people turn around suddenly to address the eerie feeling that something is behind them. And if they had eyes to see, they would sadly realize that something indeed was lurking behind them. And other than lurking, the lurkers rarely did much of anything. The name lurker was just a generic name we gave to one of the many odd beings which populate the house of creation. He was aware of the presence of the lurker, so too was the pharaoh dragon, who snapped her teeth at the lurker when he got a little too close. And when he turned around, the lurker stopped for a moment, and the lad then resumed his way upstairs. At the second floor, an oven servant passed by him, and the maiden seemed taken aback when she saw him. The blood-red hair and eyes were unnerving, and his eyes only narrowed for a second as he passed by her. And this look dissipated when he became aware of an odd sensation in one of his fingers. The baby pharaoh dragon was nibbling on his fingers, and he raised the dragon to look at her eye to eye. An imitation of the humans, she gave Ahi something that could be passed for a smile. He smiled back at the dragon. He found his way towards Eleanor's door, and he could sense she was outside in the balcony of her room, and he placed the dragon on the floor before reaching for the door handle. The dragon watched at his movement with mild amusement, and before the door opened, he drew a line in the floor with his feet, and the dragon got the hint, and he left Ahi to his own devices. He opened the door softly, and Eleanor's bedroom was rather pink. The girl did not like pink per se. Her favorite color had always been baby blue, and she only wore since because of Undine, and this helped mask Eleanor's misgivings by helping them pass as innocence or naivete. The walls and roofs were painted pink, and the wooden borders around the roof and also were white, and the floor was made of redwood. All the windows had 3 layers of curtains. The first one was white and decorated with flowers. The bed was made of ebony, and it had satin shiny coverings and 2 large pillows, and beside the bed there was a nightstand. And over the chimney there was a square rococo mirror, and it had golden tracery for decoration. He opened the door leading to the balcony. Eleanor was sitting on a couch and beside her maid, and she had grown up a lot. At the age of 16, she was at the prime of her beauty, and she could say or do anything she wanted, and men would just simply find it adorable. And despite her disposition, she was courted every so often, and she was one of the few girls of marriageable age still in Praga. The estate tied to her name was worth quite a hefty sum, and Iago had to put up some properties under her name for the dowry purposes, and she also had become graceful and had developed a taciturn behavior. Undine had done wonders for Eleanor in her own sickening type of way. Eleanor had a delicate aquiline nose, and her face was a bit rounded like a doll, and her most striking feature were her glistering emerald eyes, and her eyebrows were naturally graceful, and her lips rosy red, and the lower lip was a bit fuller than the upper one. And she had the build of a ballerina, right down to the small chest and delicate refined limbs. And to amuse themselves, the soldiers had the bad habit of chasing after Eleanor, and the lady looked simply adorable running away. and despite her fragile demeanor, Eleanor could run non-stop for hours, and the way the girl ran was reminiscent of the nymphs. And Eleanor did not mind being chased. It was one of the few amusements that were not forbidden to her. When he saw her, Eleanor was wearing a lovely pink and white dress, and it had a rococo design. Her short blonde hair was pulled back with a satin ribbon, with a decorated pink rose. And he noticed Eleanor was not wearing any shoes, and unlike typical noble dresses, Eleanor's dress was a bit toned down. And Undine was never able to get the girl to wear a corsage or any other elaborate ostentation, and for that reason Eleanor did not spend an eternity or two getting dressed as was the fashion of the day. And she also did not bother with jewelry, since she always lost track of it. She also always the bad habit of misplacing it or lending it to strangers who never returned it to her. And Eleanor's maid was dressed in a baby blue cashmere dress. The pair painted a pretty picture. Eleanor was washing the leaf falls, and her room faced the gardens, and her maid was busying herself with sewing. And the maid was the first to notice Ahi, and she turned to face the lad and asked, "Who are you?" Ahi saluted the maid, and the elf maid turned pale when she noticed Ahi's red hair color. And as was the habit of the elves, the maid went back to sewing while pretending that Ahi did not see. Eleanor yawned in an unladylike fashion and stretched her nimble limbs, and she then reclined on the sofa, and the elf made a frown when she noticed Eleanor's dirty feet on the couch. And the maid got up and went to the bathroom, and she brought from there a large plate and a towel and soap and basin filled with cool water. And she started to rigorously clean Eleanor's dirty feet. And the floor in the manor was always kept immaculately clean because of Eleanor despised wearing shoes. He tapped on the maid's shoulder to get her attention, and he pointed with his thumb to the door and gestured back with his hand, and the maid got the cue that he wanted her to skedaddle, or to get the hell out of here. He took the soap and towel from the maid, and he finished cleaning Eleanor's feet, and when he finished, he took the items back to the bathroom. Eleanor did not notice and by the time he had finished cleaning her feet, she had fallen asleep. She rested her head on top of her hands, which laid on the cushioned armrest, and he sat down beside her, and he watched her peaceful slumber, and he leaned closer to her to stroke her pale face, but decided to let her keep on dreaming. He settled back down on his seat. Since the manor was built on a small hill, he was able to see the forest beyond the garden from Eleanor's bedroom, and he looked at the forest, and the forest stared back at him. It took less than a day for Eleanor to stop being angry at Ahi, and she was not the type of girl to have a grudge for very long. As for Ahi, who was finally able to stop thinking, Eleanor's cheerfulness was enough to dispel all of the dark shadows that weighed on his mind and heart. The pair spent most of the time together, and when Ahi was not with Eleanor, he would amuse himself by working in the fields. The servants were a bit uneasy, but soon they got used to his presence. And as for Iago, and as usual, Iago could never quite understand why he did what he did. The lad was always full of surprises, and at night he would go to the forest, and Eleanor could not share in his insomnia, and he would quietly observe what nature had to offer in the stillest hour. And in other nights he would ride out with Horsey, and today he was up to something different. After speaking much with Eleanor, the girl decided that she wanted Ahi to hand out invitations to her birthday party, and it was up to Ahi to invite as many people as possible, and since Ahi was acting as a messenger, so he traded his peasant attire for one of an overall outfit, and this outfit was typical of bravados, and there were sort of male models, and they were usually seen in places with money, and the outfits consisted of an elegant loose, long-sleeved white shirt. Over was a tighter segment, and the pieces were placed over a white shirt tied over an egg-shaped ribbons, and this gave the top a puffy look, and the bottom was usually a tight piece with identical colored boots, and at times the pants and shoes were combined into one attire, and this attire came with a cape, and his bravado outfit had the color red, and with a white shirt and a lighter red cape, and he also wore an elegant red hat with red plumes. And he carried a satchel with the invitation. It so happened that today was a darkly cloudy day, and it seemed as if the world would start raining at any moment. And he went to the stables to saddle Horsey, and while riding out the stable, he stopped Horsey, and he noticed that Iago was waiting for him. And he rode up to Iago and saluted him by removing his hat. And Iago returned the salute by removing an imaginary hat. And Iago was not much of a hat person, and he asked Ahi, "How many invitations do you have?" And he counted the invitations before responding, 47. Are they addressed to individuals or entire families? Inquired Iago. Without opening the letters, he read each and every one of the invitations, like he scanned them. To an answer, it simply looked as if he flipped quickly over each invitation. After a minute or so, he answered, 5 invitations are addressed to family, and the families are on average composed of 4 members, 1 husband, a wife, plus or minus a kid. The other 42 are addressed to individuals, and they are open, and the nature implies that they will be allowed to bring with them whoever they choose. And can you give me a rough estimate of how many people are going to be coming to the party? Insisted Iago. I cannot say for certain. It all depends on how many people RSVP, responded him. RSVP, repeated Iago, who was not familiar with that acronym. He looked at us for a moment, and we searched all of our observations and cross-linked other observations to come up with an estimate. And when we finished with our calculation, we forwarded the results. And during this process, his eyes went glassy for a few seconds. Eventually, he said to Iago, "We can expect between 361 to 148 guests. At worst, we might end up with 79 guests." And Iago frowned and said, "That many?" "Don't worry now, Iago. A number of those invited to the party are not human, and I will make it my mission to keep them from bothering the weakling guests," said he, trying to sound reassuring. And after saying this, he went on his way, and he rode to the slave quarters, and he seemed a bit somber, and he was remembering the last party he had ever organized. And after thinking things through for the last few months, he realized where he had gone wrong. The booze he had provided had ruined things, and tried to keep things merry. He decided that he had to keep everyone sober this time. And Horsey said to him, "I know what you're thinking, and you want to have a party without liquor, and trust me, this won't have a happy ending either. And having humans sober is just as dangerous as having them drunk." "I know," Horsey said sadly. "All work and no fun, Miss Johnny, a dull boy." And the half-elf manager greeted he when he saw the lab approaching, and he said to him, "Foul weather we're having." Yes, foul weather indeed," said he, matching the elf's disdainful tone. "What brings you over to this pigsty?" asked the elf. And he reached into his satchel and he brought out 2 letters. "I had 2 invitations for Eleanor's birthday party, and this is important to her, and I am determined to make her birthday party a success, and I cannot stress enough, your full cooperation will be greatly appreciated." The half-elf took the 2 invitations and stuck them unceremoniously in his pocket. And when he did this, he hissed at him, and this hiss showed his glistering white razor-sharp teeth. And it was echoed by 5 other hisses from the nearby baby pharaoh dragons, and their mate also stood on end. He pointed to the elf, and then he passed his thumb over his neck. And the elf got the message loud and clear. He kicked the sides of Horsey to lead him to the next destination, and he made his way to the stable, and then he handed Iago an invitation. Iago frowned before saying, "You know I live here too, there's no need to give me an invitation." "But without an invitation, how would you get inside the party?" said he, folding his arm. And Iago realized that it was futile to argue with him, and he realized that Eleanor probably wrote down invitations for even the slaves. And shaking his head, he watched as he ran out into the fields, and like he predicted, he gave invitation to all of the slaves who were obligated to serve the guests during the party. And Iago could not shake off a feeling of foreboding, and the weather and his blood-red attire only worsened the mood. The wind picked up speed as the storm came closer, and he had delivered 13 of the 47 invitations, and he rode outside the plantation, and in the center of town at a crossroad, he stopped. And he raised one of the invitations, and a strong wind came, and the invitation flew away. He smiled when he saw the invitation depart. And the Berserkers and Patrol saw this odd scene and frowned, and they had a really bad feeling about the party. And he saluted the Berserkers and Patrol, and the Berserkers returned the salute without much enthusiasm. And he rode out to each of them and handed them one invitation, and the first Berserker tore out the envelope, and he read the letter. And while he read it, he did his best not to burst out laughing, and he could feel that he watching him, and he handed the letter to his partner, who chuckled after reading it. And the first took out paper from a tiny notebook he carried, and he scribbled some notes on the paper, which he tore up and handed it to him. And the other Berserker did the same, and he smiled at the Berserker, and they smiled in return. And he was the only person in the small group with all of his teeth, very sharp, razor-sharp teeth, for nibbling. And he left the Berserker salon as he rode towards the barrack, and the captain of the unit was outside, and he was training a good number of people in this unit, and the scene that set the Berserker outside was a regiment, And even after learning the basics, the soldiers were expected to continue training, honing, and they would never be allowed to grow fat and lazy, as was the habit of the guards of the day. And the captain of the unit was called Samuel Del Rey, Gros Safiel, and he got the name Gross since to Bersamin, and for some reason one day Bersamin started calling him Samuel D. Gross instead of Dr. Gross, and the name stuck after the while, and the poor captain was anything but gross. And he was a fragile sort of man, and he had short brown hair and refined mustache, and his somber black eyes and gentle disposition did wonders to match his true nature. And unlike the man he was training, Dr. Gross was not wearing an armor, and he was dressed in a white noble outfit, and his only weapon was a rapier attached to his leather belt, and this rapier never left his side. He saluted Gross, and one of the Gross's men said to him, Dr. Gross, he is here to see you, and Gross turned around to face Ahi, and a slight twitch in his left eye was the only visible sign of his annoyance. And in a such gentle voice, Gross asked, and what brings blood-red idiotic brother to the training grounds? Like he's a rude person. And he smiled when he heard Gross' rude question, and he liked Dr. Gross a lot, and he was a sort of honest chap of our kind, like right away. And he carried himself with the arrogance of an elf, and unlike the elf, he had the skill to back up his arrogance. And he wrote out to the doctor and handed him a letter, and Gross did not bother to open the letter to know what it was, and he patted her asleep before saying, I'll be there. And Gross nodded, and what sort of present should my friend bring? Bring her something baby blue, and a dolly maybe, or a music box, said he, rubbing his chin. And he then left Gross's side, and the light rode deeper into the barracks, and he dismounted in front of the birdcage. The birdcage was the ironic name given to the building which housed all of the pudgy dragons belonging to the standing army. And the birdcage was a barn-looking wooden structure, and he entered the structure in search of any off-duty messenger. The birdcage interior was large and wide, and there was hardly anything to obstruct the coming and going of the messenger dragons, and the interior was separated into two sections. The left and right had the chicken houses. Instead of housing chickens, they served as temporary homes for the little dragons. And like chickens, the pudgy dragons rested in their nests, and overall there were 750 chicken houses, and each one could house at least 4 little dragons, and it was rare for the entire chicken house to be occupied. At most there would only be 1 or 2 nests occupied. And one day, someone would come to feed the dragon. Once a day somebody would feed the dragon, and usually the feeders brought a live cow and 12 chickens or fishes, and it all depends on what the dragons were in the mood for. And when the meal was brought out, the little dragons would swoop in like piranhas, and the entire meal would be consumed in less than 10 minutes. And should the feeders fail to bring the desired meal, the dragons would then eat them instead. And this problem only happened once, and since then all of the dragons were fed on time what they wanted to eat. So like if the feeders don't bring the right meal, like the dragon, like, they like swarm and eat them out and eat the human. Ah! And he went up to one of the chicken houses and he knocked on the door, and he heard a soft hissing behind there, and from the window a little pudgy pharaoh dragon reared her head, and she had the similar build and design of pharaoh dragons, and she differed in wingspan and slimness, and all of the pudgy dragons had large wings and occasionally slim body. And then he handed the pudgy dragon the invitation, and the dragon read the address over the top, and then he went back inside and came out the front door. And the dragon had on her back a small leather parcel. And she said to her, I can carry no more than 12 envelopes. And he gave the dragon 11 more letters, and the dragon looked to the address over the top, and then carefully tied the letters together inside his parcel. And then he stretched out his hands to allow her to gingerly perch on his wrist, and then he took the dragon outside to let it fly, and after catching a good wind, the little dragon gently glided up. And when it was at a good height, the large dragon wings split into 2, and the wings flew with swiftness akin to the hummingbirds, and in no time she was lost from sight. And he watched the dragon fly away, and Horsey said to her, he don't even think about it. Said he, quite disappointed. If you care about these people, do not distress them, said Horsey. Their ilk hate surprises, and please, for both of our sake, keep your little surprises to a bare minimum. And he pondered a month what Horsey said, and very few people had the eloquence to get through him. And he said much on his past behavior and what would count as a surprise. And after pondering this for 10 seconds, he frowned. And he said to Horsey, go back, I want to deliver the remaining invitations by myself. And Horsey shook his head and neighed, and then he trotted back to the manor. That's the end of chapter 23.